The machines in today's video have extraordinary capabilities, from massive tunnel boring machines to segmental bridge building machines. Join me for today's video as we take a look at 15 of the most incredible machines you wouldn't believe existed. Number 15. Kobelco SK 3500D. Alright, kicking off the list of incredible machines is the Kobelco SK 3500D. Back in 2005, the Kobelco Construction Machinery Company developed a building demolition machine that would be able to bring down even the tallest of buildings. And in turn, the world's largest demolition company created the world's largest demolition machine. Japanese demolition companies were the first in line to swoop up this machine, as the country's been undergoing a rapid urban redevelopment over the years. Old buildings are coming down to make way for something new, but demolition teams are running into problems when trying to tackle the ultra-tall buildings with thick concrete foundations. The Kobelco has a working range of over 213 feet, which is about the height of a 21-story building. This amazing machine is built on a 200-ton crawler crane carrier, and the wide span and low center of gravity help to keep things slow and steady, as buildings are being dismantled piece by piece. The SK 3500D has a high-output power plant used in excavators. It makes sense that the extensive number of attachments provided by the folks at Kobelco, and of course, it can be spotted from miles away because of its ultra-long arms. And while this thing is perfectly suited for high-rise demolition, it also has no problem taking down smaller structures once the front attachment or crusher is swapped out for the smaller model. It's an incredibly impressive and versatile machine that's so large it makes you wonder how you didn't know it existed. Number 14. Tunnel Boring Machine. Ever wonder how construction crews are able to create those massive deep holes underneath cities and towns? Well, look no further than the epic tunnel boring machine. Also known as moles, these tunnel boring machines are used to excavate tunnels using a circular cross-section through a variety of soil and rock strata. They bore right through the hard rock like it's nothing and can create tunnel diameters anywhere from 3 to 60 feet across. These massive machines offer a great alternative to drilling and blasting methods in rock and conventional hand mining in soil, and they have the advantage of limiting the disturbance to the surrounding ground while producing an incredibly smooth tunnel wall. This also means a significant reduction in the cost of lining the tunnel and makes the tunnel boring machine more suitable for use in urban areas. But these machines have been around for much longer than you'd ever guess, with the first successful tunnel machine developed in 1825 to excavate the Thames Tunnel beneath London. But tunnel boring machines have certainly come a long way as centuries have passed, and in 2016 one was used to create the Gotthard Base Tunnel in Switzerland. And at nearly 100 miles long, it's one of the longest tunnels in the world, not to mention one of the most expensive to build, as it required 2 tunnel boring machines to build, with both of them starting in opposite ends only to meet in the middle. Number 13. Segmental Bridge Launching Machine. Building bridges takes a lot of work. It can take months on the drawing board, but when you actually get out into the field, it's a completely different story, with hundreds of painstaking hours and lots of manpower to get the job done. But if you have the Segmental Bridge Launching Machine, known as the SLG 9000 for short, this machine is employed by China to help construct high rail viaducts in a short period of time. It's almost 300 feet long, 23 feet wide, and weighs a whopping 640 tons. But how exactly does this bridge-building behemoth work? Well, this machine picks up the necessary beams, drives them over to the bridge's pillars, extends itself between them, and deposits the beam as it moves along. It really is quite an awesome piece of machinery that makes for a much more efficient and stress-free building process. The SLG 9000 is split into 4 sections and manages to get around with the support of 16 wheels per section, making a total of 64 wheels. And to make things even easier for the construction teams, each section of the SLG 9000 can rotate up to 90 degrees. On average, one of these building machines has a lifespan of about 4 years, but just imagine what it'll be able to do as more research goes into them. Number 12. Wave Energy Converters. Wave hello to wave energy. It's different from tidal energy. Wave energy is produced from the ocean's waves, but different techniques can be used to transform the wave into electric power, including dams and even devices anchored to the ocean floor. And what makes this form of electricity so great is that it's so environmentally friendly. It doesn't hurt us, the animals, or even the atmosphere. This is another form of electricity, though, that's most attractive along the coasts, but it's also a great way for countries around the world to reduce their dependence on foreign fuel sources. By harnessing the power of the ocean, they can become more self-sufficient and reinvest their capital within their own domestic economies. The only issue with wave energy is, well, the waves. If you've ever seen the ocean, some days are better than others, and this is no different with wave energy. You're not always going to have these huge swells, and the electricity that's created is very dependent on the wavelengths. Number 11. Large Hadron Collider. Sitting on the border of France and Switzerland, 175 meters below the Earth's surface, is the Large Hadron Collider. The Large Hadron Collider, or LHC for short, lies in a massive tunnel 27 kilometers in circumference and is the world's largest high-energy particle collider. It was built deep underground by the European Organization for Nuclear Research in collaboration with over 10,000 scientists from hundreds of universities and laboratories around the globe. The LHC is another scientific endeavor that needs to stay far away from the cosmic radiation of the surface and functions best at subterranean depths. Many physicists use it to study the laws governing the interactions of forces among subatomic particles, the deep structures of space and time, and quantum mechanics. But over the years, the LHC has shattered records in the world of particle collisions, and as of 2018, it's been shut down to undergo further upgrades to the decades-old technology. But perhaps some of the universe's biggest secrets are best kept deep underground. Number 10. Gemini DK. Next time you're walking down the busy streets, you could be crossing paths with this probably most human-looking robot. His name, Gemini DK. Okay, maybe not the coolest or most practical name in the world, but Gemini DK is going to have you fooled at first, second, and maybe even third glance. And even then, you may be asking yourself if this is a human pretending to be a robot, rather than the other way around. But rest easy, because this guy is, at the end of the day, just a bucket of nuts and bolts, albeit very well put together. The DK is the next generation of the Geminoid series of ultra-realistic androids from Kokoro, a Japanese firm, and Osaka University roboticist Hiroshi Ishiguro. Believe it or not, the DK was designed to look just like Professor Heinrich Scharf of Aalborg at the University of Denmark. And now you really can't even tell the two apart. The robot impersonator costs about 200 grand and was created in order to study people's reactions to lifelike robots, because frankly, unless you're on the world's top robotics team, it's not something many of us have grown accustomed to just yet. Kind of a strange life purpose for the Gemini DK, but then you have to ask, is something like this alive? Well, it makes you think, doesn't it? Number 9. Nissan Blade Glider. We've all heard of a cutting-edge vehicle. But what about a vehicle that looks like it can actually cut an edge? The Nissan Blade Glider looks sharp enough to give you a paper cut if you get too close. Originally shaped like a bullet, the Blade Glider looked a lot more like a race car from the future with rear hinge doors and a sleek two-tone color scheme. But even the car's interior adopts a more futuristic look, with the steering wheel sitting smack dab in the middle of the dashboard, with all sorts of buttons, bells and whistles, and screens to keep things entertaining. All of the critical vehicle info is at the driver's fingertips, with the dash looking more like a small home theater than your conventional car. And although there's only enough room for one in the front, the rear of the car widens with 2 passenger seats, meaning no one will ever have to enjoy this strange vehicle alone. But perhaps more importantly, the Blade Glider is an electric zero-emissions vehicle, so you can cut right through the air and down the street in this thing without leaving behind a carbon footprint. Number 8. ALE SK350. You can't let the US-based companies have all the fun. ALE is a heavy lifting machine manufacturer based out of the United Kingdom, and while they don't crush the competition, they simply lift them up and move them aside. And their AL SK350 is one of the top-of-the-line creations, and all others pale in comparison to the AL. Their AL SK350 was unleashed in 2013, and for a brief moment in time, it was known as the world's largest capacity land-based crane. It maintained the title for a good 6 years before someone else managed to stand just a little taller. But this thing is still a beast with its max height of 720 feet tall and carrying capacity of 5,000 tons. This is another crane, though, that's just way too big to be left in one piece, so it takes a whole crew to disassemble and then reassemble it between jobs, the entire process taking about 4 weeks. So if you need to start construction in February, you'd better start putting this guy together in January. The SK350 is the favored crane in the colder reaches of Canada, specifically for the oil and gas fields, but these models have even made their way into the likes of Brazil, and these are pretty tough to miss too, with their intimidating red and black paint job. Number 7. Road Printer. You may have a printer for your office, but then why not make one for the road? Road printers, they're an awesome piece of technology that let the road workers work smarter, not harder. And it really is exactly what it sounds like, because all anyone has to do is load her up with the cut stone from the top, and the road printer will lay it out for you nicely. It can lay these stones down up to nearly 20 feet across, and works much faster than if a crew was laying the stones manually. No more literal back-breaking labor here. Plus, these road printers only require 3 people to operate, and the self-steering technology helps to keep the machine in place as it slowly backs down the street at a speed of about 13 feet per minute. Luckily, many of these road printers run entirely on electricity too, meaning they don't add any carbon footprint to their stone footprint. And not only is this cutting-edge technology better for both humans and the environment at large, but it just kind of looks cool as it lays out the bricks. Number 6. Trencher D80. If you live in a city, then you may know what it's like to be woken up by the construction team cutting into the pavement using something called a disc trencher. But that's small, and there are going to be moments when you need something like the next Trencher D80. This thing is an absolute monster, and it looks downright intimidating too. But it's also the perfect piece of technology to cut through pavement like it's butter. But why would you need to cut through the road? Well, sometimes companies need to lay pipes or wires down there, and it needs to be done fast. So the next Trencher D80 was specifically designed and crafted to cut down deep into the urban environment to create perfectly smooth trenches. But you'll notice that the disc itself is concealed, so it keeps the impact on the working area, surrounding environments, and of course fellow motorists to the bare minimum. It cuts right through the road without bothering anyone, while keeping things clean, safe, and simple. Number 5. Big float. We've probably all seen giant excavators reaching their way up to the sky to bring down old buildings to make way for something new. But what about when a project gets a little wet? Well, that's where the Big Float comes in. The Remu Big Float is an amazing contraption that uses a pontoon undercarriage system to float on bodies of still water and high-strength wear-resistant steel on a 360-degree working radius. It's an awesome machine, and quite the sight as it floats along. It's the perfect tool for dredging and silt removal. As the sand and silt wash downstream, they gradually fill the rivers and lakes, which makes it easy for trash and debris to accumulate in waterways, preventing the natural water flow, which in turn can lead to floods. So the Remu Big Float makes its way in to help clear canals after storms and dredging up both deep and shallow bodies of water. But you can also find this floating behemoth on the surface of ponds and lakes, as it helps take care of vegetation overgrowths to help fight water stagnation and keep things going with the flow. It truly is an amazing piece of machinery that, unless you're living near one of these bodies of water, often flies under our collective radar. Number 4. The Road Zipper. Your pants or your jacket may have zippers, but how about your roads? Barrier transfer machines, or road zippers, have been around since the mid-1980s, but not too many people know about them, so good thing you're here. These road zippers are heavy construction vehicles made to transport and transfer those thick, heavy concrete lane dividers. So, have you ever wondered how those things got moved? Well, now you know. The road zippers and the barriers they use offer a much better alternative to something like traffic cones or temporary traffic lights, seeing as how no one can disobey a giant slab of concrete in the middle of the road. Plus, the road zipper offers a much safer alternative for the laborers, because with these vehicles they don't need to risk life and limb placing something like cones in the middle of traffic. These road zippers load up the concrete barriers, many of which weigh 1,000 pounds, and typically lay them down across 100-foot spans, meaning the road zippers are capable of hauling incredibly heavy loads. And if you do manage to catch a glimpse of a road zipper at work, consider yourself lucky, because although they get quite a bit of use, they're usually employed at times when the streets are less congested. Number 3. Mercedes-Benz Future Bus. Mercedes-Benz makes some of the best cars around, so why not throw their hat into the world of public transportation? The Mercedes-Benz Future Bus recently made its first trip out in the Netherlands along Europe's bus rapid transit route from Amsterdam Schiphol Airport to the town of Haarlem. It was a 12-mile ride full of twists and turns, along with plenty of tunnels and busy traffic routes, and luckily for the world of commuters, the Future Bus exceeded expectations. And while this bus of the future technically has a driver on board, it's mainly an autonomous vehicle that uses what's called City Pilot technology. The City Pilot can recognize your typical problems on the road and solve just about any traffic problem that may arise. It can recognize obstacles on the road, other cars, and even those pesky jaywalkers. And the best part is the driver never has to hit the gas or step on the brake. In fact, they only need to take the wheel in accordance with traffic regulations when there's oncoming traffic, but they can still intervene and take over control should the need arise. The Mercedes-Benz Future Bus can hit about 44 miles an hour on the open road and will no doubt become one of the most important publicly used vehicles of the future. Number 2. Twin D T4 Shaker. Growing nuts like pistachios and almonds is a pretty arduous process, and when it's time to finally harvest them, picking them off the trees can prove to be even tougher. There are thousands of them, and you just can't pick all of them individually by hand. Plenty of high-tech tools have been created to help expedite the harvesting process, but there's one that manages to stand above the rest: the Twin D T4 Shaker. Almond crops are usually harvested by shaking the trees and letting the nuts fall onto the ground and then swept into the machine, creating tons of dust, which still has to be cleaned. And that costs money, but the Twin D T4 shakers have been specially designed to not just shake those trees, but catch and windrow the nuts without the need for the dusty sweep, reducing the dust by 90%. And they look pretty cool when they're put to work, moving down the orchard seamlessly as they leave the wobbly trees in their wake. This fun machine has already caught the attention of the state agencies charged with overseeing air pollution for its quality control. It's also a great tool for the pistachio industry, because as these pistachios typically fall to the ground, their hulls split before being harvested, making them unmarketable. So, the Twin D T4 Shaker saves time, money, and even the environment as it carefully catches walnuts, pecans, and even prunes and plums before they're dried, packaged, and shipped off to a grocery store near you. Number 1. Ultraviolet Lithography Machines. Most people in the modern world are walking around with a tiny computer in their pocket, but they don't really know how it works, which is okay. But it takes a lot more than just opening it up and looking inside to truly comprehend what's going on in there. These phones all have chips in them that are made by extreme ultraviolet machines. These machines are pretty serious and contain about 100,000 moving parts and about 6,500 feet of cables to get the job done. Something like this costs a hefty $120 million to build and requires 40 freight containers to be transported. It's pretty big. But because these machines are so big, so expensive, and just so downright complicated, that there are only just a few dozen of these things in existence, and there are 2 years worth of back order for them as well. Like Rome, these machines can't be built in a day, but because they're so expensive, only a small handful of companies can even afford them, with most of them being semiconductor manufacturers. But a UV machine is churning out 50,000 tiny droplets of molten tin per second, and then blast them with a powerful internal laser to turn it into plasma. The radiation from the plasma is concentrated into a beam that bounces off 6 special mirrors within, and then sent to a reticle. All the 100,000 parts of the EUV machine are moving with such precision and on such a small scale that a lot of the work is too hard for the human eye to even comprehend, creating things that are just the size of a few atoms. Watch our Machines playlist for more top 15 videos about awesome machines. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best machine videos.